The wild airflow had still not completely dissipated. It still blew through the banquet hall. The wild airflow had still not completely dissipated. It still blew through the banquet hall. But at that moment, everything was completely silent on Divine Mountain. The scene was firmly imprinted on everyone's mind. The battle of understanding the 1,000-character stele had come to this. It was no longer just a simple battle of understanding. It had now become much more personal for the combatants. Xing Kai and Yi Futian had even let loose Runhuang-level techniques, and had cast the spells that they were most specialized in, displaying astonishing power. And throughout the process, Qi Shang had not stopped them, but had let them have free rein. Under these circumstances, Yi Futian, who was at the first tier of the divine path, had been able to defeat Xing Kai, who was a saint of true self. Could that mean that, if he reached the level of a saint of true self, it was highly likely that he could directly defeat Xing Kai in battle? He had already proven his understanding. He was not only stronger than Xing Kai, he was stronger than anyone else here. Otherwise, how could this doctrine saint have made it to the very end? And not only that, he had made it to the very end in an outstanding fashion. First, Pei Min, the descendant of Emperor Jian, had admitted he was no match for him. Then he had defeated Luo Yang, who had previously defeated Xiaqing Yuan. And his last fight with Xing Kai had been the most brilliant, and he had still managed to defeat him. Such a display could only be called incomparably glorious. It could indeed be said that he had swept away everyone in his path. At that moment, everyone realized why Yi Futian had been made the lord of Qinya City. There were 3 great figures of Qinya City in Emperor Xia's city that had the right to enter the regional king ranking. Yi Futian, Yu Sheng, and Xiaqing Yuan. In the future, Qinya City would very likely become the premier city in the Crimson Dragon Palace. Brilliant. Upon Divine Mountain, many of the Nirvana-level figures had a look of appreciation on their faces. Brilliant indeed. Xing Kai had unleashed the heaven-punishing fighting will, and the techniques that he had cultivated seemed to have been passed down from the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty. In the past, when Emperor Xia's realm and Emperor Li's realm had been at war, it was said that the imperial advisor was not willing to kill him. Now I see why, someone whispered. He would indeed never have wanted to kill such a talented, dutiful disciple. Of course, if he had been an enemy, he would have been eliminated. This generation of the Crimson Dragon realm is full of talents. I had thought that this would be the age of Xing Kai, Luo Yang, Pei Min, and Jiang Taiyi, but I had not thought that first Yu Sheng, and then Yi Futian would be so dominant. There are so many heroes nowadays. We don't even know which ones to watch, they all said as they smiled. There was also an uproar among the people watching below the mountain. Yi Futian's name had already been well known throughout the Crimson Dragon realm. But even at the Battle of Qinya City, he had been relying on Emperor Qua's will rather than his own power. But he had indeed proved himself in this battle. He was a top figure, in no way inferior to anyone in the Crimson Dragon realm, including those on the regional king ranking and the undefeated Xing Kai. But today, Xing Kai had been defeated. The one who had defeated him was younger than him, and of a lower level. No one knew what Xing Kai was thinking at that moment. How awkward, whispered the prince of Emperor Dong's palace, Duan Wuji, as he saw Yi Futian pointing his long halberd at Xing Kai. Earlier, he had lost to Luo Yang, and the Yi Futian had defeated Luo Yang and Xing Kai in succession. He and Yi Futian were at the same level. He was still desperate for a real battle with Yi Futian. It looked like he would not get the chance now. This guy had embarrassed him, but there was still a slight smile on Duan Wuji's face. Since Yi Futian's was this strong, then did that mean that what had happened at Emperor Qua's ruins was not such a humiliation? And it was not just him. All the top cultivators of the Crimson Dragon realm were gathered here, and every one of them had been defeated. Thus, it was perfectly understandable that he had not been able to seize Emperor Qua's inheritance. The people who had come with Xing Kai from the ancient imperial city all had ugly looks on their faces, especially Xing Qiu. He had a look of shock and disbelief on his face. His older brother had lost? He still remembered that after the end of the Battle of the Crimson River, his brother Xing Kai had comforted him by saying that no one in the world of cultivators could remain undefeated. Now Xing Kai himself had lost. It was as if he was proving his own words. Moreover, the one who had defeated him was Yi Futian himself. On that day, the two of them had had the desire to face off against each other. But at that time, his brother had looked down on Yi Futian and had not considered him a worthy opponent. But what about now? Xingkai looked up at Yi Futian. He also remembered what had happened at the Battle of the Crimson River. Even before the battle today, he had not considered Yi Futian to be a worthy opponent. He thought that his final opponent would be a saint of true self like Pei Min, Luo Yang, or Jiang Taiyi. Yi Futian was no longer his concern. The enmity between them had not been resolved today. He had never once cared about this opponent. But now, Yi Futian was right in front of him, pointing at him with his halberd with extremely dazzling light spreading out from him. In the world of cultivators, who could remain undefeated, he had known he would lose eventually, but he had not thought that it would be like this. He had never thought that he would lose to Yi Futian today. Nowadays, many people were saying that Qinya City would one day compete with the ancient imperial city for the title of the principal city in the Crimson Dragon realm. He looked on that prospect with scorn. But was it really impossible? In the future, if Yu Sheng, Yi Futian and Xiaqing Yuan achieved nirvana, could he Ninth Servant and Gai Huang suppress them? Moreover, Yi Futian had also conquered the 9 great tribes. Finally, as he stood there calmly in the air, Xingkai said in a cold voice, "I hate being pointed at." Thinking of defeat and being truly defeated were not the same thing. He found that he was already feeling humiliated by this battle. It was hard for him to bear it. He was incredibly proud by nature. He may have known that he would definitely suffer defeats upon the great path, but he had thought that it would happen later on his road, when he reached a stronger sphere, and opponents who were more glorious. But in reality, the person who was pointing at him now was someone who had previously been too proud to even fight. Thus, this made it even more difficult to bear. "You lost," said Yi Futian calmly. "Why should a loser be so proud?" He hated it when people struck at others in a time of crisis. But Xing Chou and Gai Huang had done just that. If they had been weaker, then Qinya City would have been destroyed, and he would have died. So what did it matter what Xingkai hated? Whoosh! An extremely fierce airflow swept out. Astonishing fighting will burst forth from Xingkai's body. He was no longer controlling his power. The aura of a saint of true self flared out, and the heaven-punishing fighting will bloomed. Lines of frightening light of the great path swirled around his body, then whistled out, rushing towards Yi Futian. In a flash, Yi Futian felt a shocking burst of power. His deed of thought comprehension flared as well. In the next moment, he saw Xingkai striding forward. The great path roared as he raised his fist. It was the god of war seal. Brilliant light burst out from the halberd, and it pierced forward violently, but it still shattered beneath the god of war seal. A wild hurricane slammed into Yi Futian. He was sent flying back rapidly as the huge wave of wind crashed over him. He was thrown back to the edge of the banquet hall, where he stopped. At the peach blossom banquet, Qi Shang frowned. A look of disbelief came over everyone's faces. Xingkai was flaunting the rules here. Perhaps being defeated by Yi Futian had had quite a bad effect on him. The seal disappeared. Xingkai's eyes were cold as he swept them over Yi Futian off in the distance. He called back his aura, then turned and walked away as if nothing had happened. He did not follow up on his attack on Yi Futian. So what had been the meaning of it? All it did was make people laugh. Qi Shang was about to say something, but when he saw that Xingkai was not going to do anything else, he held his tongue. It seemed that he had wanted to display his displeasure. Luo Yang was also staring at Yi Futian. They had never imagined that the one who would defeat them would be Yi Futian. The battle for the 1,000-character steel had come to an end. There was a loud rumbling sound in the air. A huge stone steel descended from the sky. On the outside, the steel appeared plain and ordinary, but there were many ancient words engraved on it. If you did not look into it with your spiritual will, you would find nothing out of the ordinary about it. But once you entered it with a thread of spiritual will, you could immediately feel the 1,000-character proverbs. Now the steel of the 1,000-character proverbs was Yi Futian's. Qi Shang waved at Yi Futian with a smile. "Take it, Lord Yi." Yi Futian nodded. "Thank you, Your Highness." He was not too concerned by Xingkai's attack. There was no use in worrying about it. This stele of the 1,000-character proverbs was a Renhuang-level artifact. It was the whole reason for the battle. He walked up to the stele and took it. There was a strange look in everyone's eyes as they watched Yi Futian. Besides their envy and jealousy, there was another strange emotion. They all knew that Yi Futian had also taken the magic zither. The magic zither had been left behind by a demon emperor. Now this mysterious 1,000-word proverb stele that had been engraved by Renhuang was also Yi Futian's. He had just gained 2 precious Renhuang-level artifacts. Those were real treasures. It would be difficult for anyone to measure the value of either one of them. How many of the great powers of the Crimson Dragon realm owned such treasures? And Yi Futian had walked away with 2 of them. But Yi Futian did not care what they were thinking. After he took the stele, he returned to his place. All the people from Qianya City were watching him, and even Xia Qingyuan had a rare smile on her face. She had blamed herself for losing to Luo Yang, and worried that Yi Futian would have to face 2 opponents and be defeated. But Yi Futian had once again proven his unparalleled talent. This was true in Emperor Xia's realm, just as it was in Emperor Li's realm, where the imperial advisor had looked on him with favor. Now that he had come to the main region of the Crimson Dragon realm, he was still unmatched. It seemed that wherever he was, he suppressed the glory of all the proud sons of heaven around him. Everyone returned to their seats. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the peach banquet. They were not appeased. Everyone returned to their seats. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the peach banquet. They were not appeased. If these people had not been restricted by rules and fought without their wills being oppressed, what would the scene be like? It was thrilling even to think about it. It was a pity, but the peach banquet would not let this happen. Besides, everyone's plane differed. If a saint of true self fought with a doctrine saint with unrestricted will, it was not fair. Excellent, a voice came. People followed the voice, and found the speaker was Qi Shang, who was sitting at the head of the table. It was amazing to see you all comprehend the idea of 1,000-character proverbs so thoroughly in just an hour. Especially the ones at the end's performances were marvelous. I believe the 1,000-character proverb will get a chance to shine in Lord Ye's hand, said Qi Shang laughing. It is my honor to observe your peerless means. Let us toast to the heroes of our Crimson Dragon realm. He drank up the wine in his cup. Thank you, Your Highness. The peach banquet is renowned around the world. It is an honor for everyone in Crimson Dragon realm to receive an invitation to peach banquet. It is our pleasure today to be invited here. Not to mention that it is a precious chance to meet so many gallant heroes, said Duan Qingshan, smiling in a graceful open manner. Yes, it is a fortunate thing to meet someone more extraordinary than oneself, said Yu Shifei with a gentle smile. Such a chance was indeed rare. It was thanks to the peach banquet that they could convene together. You all are the future of the Crimson Dragon realm. Compared with you, I am the lucky one to be here. Perhaps one day in the future, some of you will become Renhuang. At that time, the scene will be different, and your states of mind will also differ. I hope the peach banquet will become an anecdote about you, Qi Shang said, laughing. Time would change everything. Although the people here still looked young, becoming a Renhuang was still far away for them. In the long river of time, nothing was impossible as long as one was outstanding enough. The guests being invited today were the most outstanding ones of the Crimson Dragon realm. It was clear that the regional king ranking was based on the standard of having the potential to become a Renhuang. The Renhuang figures who would appear in the Crimson Dragon realm in the future must include one or some of them present today. After today, there will be new names appearing in the regional king ranking, said Pei Min, looking toward Yi Futian and Xia Qingyuan. Xia Qingyuan might not be, but according to his brilliant grade today, Yi Futian would definitely be listed on the regional king ranking. He would become the 19th figure entering the regional king ranking after Yu Sheng. I should congratulate Lord Yi beforehand, said Qi Shang laughing. People on the Divine Mountain felt uneasy. Since Qi Shang had said it like that, there was no suspense about whether or not Yi Futian would appear on the regional king ranking. At least 2 warriors of the Thousand Leaves City would be listed on the regional king ranking. Beside Crimson Dragon City, only the top city in the peripheral realm Ancient Imperial City, the Ninth Servant and Xingkai. Regional King ranking is nothing but a list, but I should still thank you, Your Highness, said Yi Futian. He didn't keep the thing in mind. The Regional King ranking itself didn't mean anything, but entering the Regional King ranking would mean a bright future, at least being of Nirvana Plane. However, it was nothing but a list. People looked toward Yi Futian. He was too proud by speaking like this. But it was the truth. Qi Shang said, Lord Yi is right. It is nothing but a list. Okay. I will not waste your time. Here is the last course of the peach banquet. The divine martial road, said Qi Shang. He rose to his feet and turned around, raised his head, and looked toward the rushing waterfall. Above the waterfall, golden peach flowers were in blossom. A celestial road seemed to be hidden inside. There was a celestial pavilion on the top. Everyone please come. Qi Shang turned around and looked toward the warriors. People rose to their feet and fixed their eyes on the celestial road above the waterfall. The pavilion on the Divine Mountain had a name, Divine Martial Palace. The Divine Martial Palace on the Divine Mountain stored martial arts classics of the world and contained law methods beyond imagination. It was the place where numerous top figures of Crimson Dragon Realm dreamt of visiting. However, people who didn't belong to the Imperial Palace only had one chance to approach the Divine Martial Palace. The chance was to attend the top 1 banquet in the Crimson Dragon Realm, Peach Banquet. Below the Peach Banquet, numerous pairs of eyes looked toward the warriors who rose to their feet, full of envy. Only the people who were invited to the Peach Banquet were qualified to walk on the Divine Martial Road. Even their companions had no right to step on it. Although Princess Qingyuan was a companion, her performance was outstanding in the previous trial. She can come, too, Qi Shang said, looking toward Xia Qingyuan. He made an exception for Xia Qingyuan to step on the Divine Martial Road. Xia Qingyuan defeated Xu Zi of the Regional Palace in the previous fight, and fought with Luo Yang at such a high level. Of course, she was qualified. So, it was reasonable that Qi Shang made an exception to allow her to come with them. Thank you very much, Your Highness, said Xia Qingyuan nodding. After Yi Futian received the peach invitation, they had researched everything about the peach banquet and knew the chance to enter the Divine Martial Road was very rare. Of course, they would have a try. She wanted to see how many steps she could take on the Divine Martial Road. Please, said Qi Shang. Your Highness, please. Warriors replied courteously. Qi Shang nodded with a smile and soon rose to the air. He directly strode onto the waterfall and walked into the boundless golden peach flowers. After a short while, they reached in front of the ancient roads and paused their steps. Peach blossoms drifted in the wind and fell slowly on the ground. The mysterious ancient roads stood in the mist. The end of the roads seemed to be the palace of deities on the top of the Divine Mountain. 36 weapons were lying ahead on the roads. Each weapon contained a wisp of path will, which represented an ancient road. People who arrived here each could choose a path to go. I think you all have heard about the Divine Martial Road. These weapons are the barriers you are about to face. But at the same time, each of them represents a kind of path method of Renhuang level. What you will get depends on which step you will finally reach, said Qi Shang. Please use your discretion in choosing which path to go on. Good luck, everybody. Okay, said Pei Min with a smile. He directly entered the ancient road with a sword with no hesitation. He cultivated in swordsmanship, so he didn't have many choices. He didn't need to hesitate. Pei Min disappeared after entering the Peach Ancient Road. But above the empty space on the Divine Martial Road, dazzling sword light flashed up. The sword floating in the air made metallic clangs and wind sound. Many figures on the Divine Mountain saw the scene and felt it normal. It was normal that Pei Min chose the road of the sword. Many people below saw the dazzling sword floating in the air and asked, just now, who chose the Divine Martial Road of the sword? Of course, Pei Min, someone replied, and many nodded. Next, how would others choose? Emperor Shu Princess, Xu Zi stepped out and chose the thunder hammer. She didn't act like a delicate lady at all. This weapon was extremely fierce. The moment she stepped on the ancient road, thunder lightning exploded in the sky above the road, extremely fierce. Xiang Zhe chose a cauldron that contained the horrifying path will of suppression. As he walked on the Divine Martial Road, A cauldron with metallic clangs appeared on the divine martial road. Xingkai chose a giant ancient bell and entered the divine martial road. Gradually, warriors all entered the roads. Numerous people were paying attention to them. Everyone chose the ancient road matching their cultivation. Which road do you want to choose? Yi Futian asked Xia Qingyuan, who was standing next to him. Xia Qingyuan pointed toward the fighting gloves, from which horrifying will of fist was exploding. She came from Emperor Xia's realm, and cultivated in the best method. The thing she got here might not be better than what she had already owned. So she treated it more like a trial. Go ahead, said Yi Futian. Xia Qingyuan nodded and walked there. Yu Sheng, how about you? Asked Yi Futian, looking at Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng pointed toward another direction, where there was a poleaxe. Yi Futian nodded. Yu Sheng went there, and entered the divine martial road. Qi Shang looked toward Yi Futian. He let Xia Qingyuan and Yu Sheng choose first. Which path road would he choose for himself? Yi Futian browsed the 36 ancient roads. First he noticed the cudgel, but he had his own heaven-traversing staff techniques. He saw the halberd, but he also created his own halberd skill, unending void. Finally, his eyes fell on one place where there was one thing, a steel. The steel seemed to contain stars. A celestial steel. Not long ago, he had obtained a steel with the inscription of 1,000-character proverb. What would happen if these two abilities merged with each other? Even if not, he was also good at starry spell anyway. Yi Futian stepped out and directly strode onto that ancient road. Qi Shang showed surprise at the scene. He didn't expect Yi Futian to finally choose the celestial steel. He raised his head and saw a gleaming giant steel show up above the divine martial road Yi Futian chose, and lit up the void sky. Yi Futian came in. Below the divine mountain, numerous pairs of eyes looked toward the divine martial road. After the previous battles, now Yi Futian had attracted much attention. His action was always the focus of people's concern. During the last battle, Yi Futian was the one who came to an end, and got the steel of 1,000-character proverb. So this time, would Xingkai, Luo Yang, and others exceed Yi Futian and prove themselves? Bam! At this moment, the sound of a bell resonated between the sky and earth, and took people's thoughts back. Many people raised their heads toward the sky above the ancient roads, and saw beams of light coming from a giant ancient bell. Soon, the second ancient bell appeared and stretched out toward the divine martial palace. It's Xiang Kai, many people said. Xingkai was the one who chose the road of the ancient bell. He was the first one to pass the first level, and let the sound of the bell resonate between the sky and earth. Whiz! Another moment. The sword emitted boundless light amid the limitless golden peach blossoms. The second sword appeared above the ancient road, and swallowed, and spat very dazzling will of sword, pointing toward the top of the divine mountain. Pei Min was the second person who passed. Soon the cauldron rang, the poleaxe shone. People knew these warriors were all heading toward the divine martial road. Every transformation meant they took one step forward. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. On the top of the divine mountain, there were Nirvana plane figures from Imperial Palace observing what happened on the divine martial road. On the top of the divine mountain, there were Nirvana plane figures from Imperial Palace observing what happened on the divine martial road. These peerless figures were currently the strongest warriors of Crimson Dragon Realm. Would they surpass former warriors and take more steps? The trial on the divine martial road could reveal who was the most outstanding one among them. However, even the public of Crimson Dragon Realm was not aware of it. Only the people from Imperial Palace knew this. Qi Shang, as the prince of the Crimson Dragon Realm, also knew a secret hidden in the divine martial road, which was only known by the core figures of the Imperial Palace. Even the top powers in the Crimson Dragon Realm didn't know about it. Who was the peerless one on the divine martial road? Would Yi Futian outperform everyone and reach the end like the last time? The trial this time wouldn't be less difficult than last time. This time, it might even be harder. The moment Yi Futian stepped onto the divine martial road, he immediately felt that time moved more slowly. It was as if everything had changed. The divine mountain was not here. There were no boundless golden peach flowers either. There was only a starry ancient road with no end. In front of him, there was an enormous steel of stars. In the steel, stars moved around. The mood inside the steel was extremely strong. It was as if all of a sudden, Futian was about to be taken into the space of the starry steel's mood. His body was below the stars, and compared to the stars, he looked so trivial. Boom! Suddenly, a massive gust of might enveloped the world and exerted pressure on Futian. Stars fell. The boundless colossus stars dropped down on him, as if the world was crashing down, and he would be turned into ashes by the stars. Futian took a step out, and instantly released the fierce power from his body. His might of law released, and the might of the great law squeezed the world and rushed out roaring. With a loud boom, the dropping stars were blocked by a gust of horrifying might. But the stars continued to spin forward, trying to vanquish him here. A strange look flashed across Futian's eyes. The pressure of the might was indeed aggressive. They all happened mentally. It was as if all was nothing but an illusion. But the scene was so vivid. If anything went wrong, he would be trounced and severely hurt. He stood in the world of the starry steel. The rotating stars kept emitting horrifying might and gnawing at his willpower until he couldn't stand it anymore. The oppression was so intense even at the beginning. What would happen next? At this moment, Futian was somewhat looking forward to it. He lifted one foot and stepped forward. The great law resonated, and the fierce will of space tore the stars apart. Stars exploded into fragments, and the starry sky seemed to break. With one step, Futian seemed to walk into another independent space. After he took the step, two starry steels appeared above the ancient divine martial road where he was. At that moment, people outside also knew that Futian had taken his first step. Now, every step he took would be the center of attention. After that, a similar scene happened again, but the might was even stronger, and more stars dropped down in the starry steel. It was as if the world was about to collapse. But Futian still took the second step with confidence. All the warriors invited to the peach banquet were heading forward, step by step. Outsides, people were looking toward the sky above the divine martial road. At this moment, the giant bell had rung 5 times, and 6 bells had shown up, which meant Xingkai had taken the 5th step. Above that ancient road, the sound of the bell released gorgeous beams of light, and the might of law swept out. No one could catch up to him. Xingkai had walked the farthest, far ahead of anyone else. On the ancient road nearby, there were 5 giant poleaxes. People knew Yusheng was there. Next to it, there was dazzling sword light piercing through the sky, projecting toward the divine martial palace. The sword will permeated the sky and earth, in which there were also 5 swords. Peimin was there. Boom! Bam! At this moment, the thunder lightning ripped the sky apart. The thunderstorm appeared in the upper sky. Warhammer somewhere above the divine martial road directly broke into pieces. The might of the thunder violently danced in the air, and soon a figure was thrown out of the ancient road. She made a sound and spat out a mouthful of blood. Shuzi, she stops there, some people said in shock. Before, there were 4 divine hammers on her ancient road, which meant she was done after taking just 3 steps. What did she encounter on the divine martial road? Shuzi wiped off the blood from her lips, quite embarrassed. Was she only able to take 3 steps on the divine martial road? Just now, why did the might in front of her suddenly surge and rise up to a horrifying level, directly shaking her out? Were other situations similar to hers? Luck is an important thing on the divine martial road. You might need more luck with it. Don't keep it in mind. The outcome is not that important, said Qishang. He seemed to know what Shuzi was thinking, so he tried to comfort her. Shuzi nodded, but she had known the actual reason, and understood Qishang was trying to make her feel better. Good luck was always in company with real strength. Qishang raised his head, and kept looking toward the divine martial road. What Shuzi thought was right. Although luck mattered on the divine martial road, the warriors who came to the end were absolutely the strongest ones. Xingkai was still heading forward. He looked invincible. Nobody knew when he would meet a barrier. Soon, Yin Tianjiao was shaken out and soon quit the game too. She didn't look good either. People gradually figured out that after Shuzi, At every step, there would be at least one person gone. Bam! After a loud sound, the sound of the cauldron resonated between the sky and earth, and then the cauldrons over the divine martial road were directly shattered into pieces. Xiangzhe's body appeared at the gate of the divine martial road. He was thrown out too. He looked quite awkward. After the 9th step, there were only 7 people left. Yu Shifei, Xie Qingshan, and Duan Wuji left the game. The first 2 people were listed on the regional king ranking, had also lost the game. One could tell how hard it was. Xia Qingyuan had trouble at the 10th step. Limitless fist shadows appeared in front of her. A gust of unsurpassable fist will struck toward her, as if a war deity-like figure launched an attack at her. The fist will resonated and lit up the willpower. All of a sudden, the power grew invincible, as if able to slay a god. Xia Qingyuan stepped forward, and still didn't want to give up. She released the infinite catastrophe from her body, and used it to collide with the endless fist will. All of a sudden, she felt an endless source of power, which smashed all the fist will and kept moving forward. She only had this feeling when fighting Yu Sheng. Her infinite catastrophe was penetrated. The fist will rushed in front of her. Finally, Xia Qingyuan could no longer stand it anymore. Above the divine martial road, fist will violently exploded into pieces. Xia Qingyuan was shaken out of the divine martial road. There were 6 people left. Yi Futian, Yu Sheng Xingkai, Luo Yang, Pei Min and Jiang Taiyi. The bell had rung 11 times, and 12 bells showed up. Xing Qia paused his steps. The other 5 warriors gradually all caught up with him. As Jiang Taiyi finally reached the end, these 6 warriors together appeared at the same starting point. But the scene above the divine martial road was extremely horrifying. Xingkai took action again. This time, he felt a terrifying power. The sound of the bell triumphed over everything, annihilating his law and his willpower. Nothing could stop it. The radiance of the great law from Xingkai's body exploded to the extreme. He launched the heaven-punishing fighting will, and summoned the war deity. The mark of the war deity was released, and darted toward the ancient bell. At this moment, the sound of the bell trembled in the sky and earth. It lingered on the top of the divine mountain endlessly. 12 rings, 12 steps. The sound of the bell made numerous people's hearts thump. Xingkai had taken the 12th step, which was approaching the limit. They looked up to the sky above the divine martial road. Matchless radiance exploded in company with the appearance of the 13 ancient bells. Xingkai was the first one who had taken 12 steps. On the top of the divine mountain, someone asked, "How many steps did the strongest warrior take in the peach banquet last time?" 13. 13 steps. Just with one more step, Xingkai will catch up with the strongest warrior from last time. Even though Yi Futian defeated him in the last battle, Xingkai still released his matchless radiance on the divine martial road. He wanted to become the peerless one. There. Someone moved too. At this moment, other people's ancient roads also showed a radical change. But soon, things on 2 ancient roads violently exploded and were destroyed. And then, people saw 2 people show up in the space under the divine martial road. They were the most extraordinary warriors of Crimson Dragon City, Luo Yang and Jiang Taiyi. They were removed from the game at the same time. Both took 11 steps. But it was still terrifying enough. Look at the sword will. At this moment, numerous pairs of eyes looked in one direction, where the frightening sword will flew and grew stronger and stronger. The 12 swords kept swallowing and spitting dazzling radiance of the sword. Finally, a new Lingtian sword will was born and converged into the 13th sword. Pei Min succeeded. Pei Min took the 12th step. Before he reached his limit, if he took one more step, he would achieve the record from last time. Last time, during the battle of understanding the 1,000-character steel, Pei Min surrendered without fighting. Still, it didn't mean this warrior from Sword Imperial Palace, whose name was on the regional king ranking, was weak. At this moment, everyone saw how powerful Pei Min's sword will was. The law of sword that he swallowed and spat during the trial of Divine Martial Road was almost horrifying. Xiang Kai and Pei Min had made it. There were another 2 people, Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. At this time, the light of the poleaxe flashed across the sky dome and released boundless radiation of the poleaxe. It was as if the sky and earth would be chopped into two. And an even bigger poleaxe of war deity showed up. 13 poleaxes formed a line. Yu Sheng had taken the 12th step. The third warrior was only one step away from achieving the same record. They had all taken the step. Before long, Yi Futian's performance was the most outstanding. Would he fail this time? If Yi Futian failed, he might have to face people's jeers. Qi Shang also stared forward. He perceived the might and felt slightly stirred. If Yi Futian succeeded this time, there would be 4 people taking the 12th step. There were only 2 people who made it in the peach banquet last time. There was only one person who took the 13th step. Now everyone was watching Yi Futian. He shouldn't disappoint them. After all, his previous performance was outstanding and undoubtedly, his talent was exceptional. But even so, Qi Shang knew that Yi Futian would have a hard time since he would have to face not only the divine martial road, but also the 3 warriors who came with him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Yi Futian indeed felt a lot of pressure. Yi Futian indeed felt a lot of pressure. He was standing in a real starry sky in the space of divine martial road. Dazzling stars were shining above his head. Tens of thousands of celestial bodies of the great law revolved in the sky, each of which released extraordinarily copious might. One could imagine how the pressure would be if all these stars of will fell down at the same time. Some stars directly plummeted toward Yi Futian. The might was released to the extreme from his body. The spatial will would block all the stars that came near. The deed of thorough comprehension was released. Ancient characters appeared around his body and formed the halo of the great law. The dazzling halberd of time and space was formed from his body. He leaned forward and thrust the halberd toward the sky dome. Suddenly, the light of the great law pierced through the sky and earth. It tore the space apart and crushed on the stars, broke them into pieces. He lifted one foot. When he tried to step forward, endless starry light of the great law shot toward him again. Suddenly, the gleam of stars shone, and he was like amid a river made of stars, where each wisp of starry light contained extremely intimidating will. They were like concrete stars blocking his way and suffocating him. This step was so hard to take. Boom! The beam of the great law starry light reached. Another star fell, like a meteor trying to smash him to death. The will of the torn space turned into beams of dazzling golden light and thrust forward. They were projected over the stars and created crevices in the stars. But that didn't stop the stars falling upon Yi Futian. The might of the deed of thorough comprehension was released. Yi Futian was bathed in the dazzling aura, like an immortal. When the stars arrived, they didn't fall on his body, but rather were crushed by themselves. Yi Futian didn't even frown. He had experienced many similar scenes before this step. After each step, a new space appeared. Each time, the number of stars increased, and the will became stronger. Besides, there was a gust of wonderful energy merged in the starry steel's attack. Stars started attacking. Yi Futian's body was shaken, but he didn't step back. He realized that the strikes of the stars were getting stronger and stronger, faster and faster, as if the dazzling falling stars streaked across the sky dome to strike his body and will, trying to wipe out his existence. Boom! 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 Yi Futian's clothes were flying in the wind. He felt his will would collapse any time. If there was no end, tens of thousands of stars would shake him away. At this moment, he had felt the oscillation of his mind and will. He was in agony because of the feeling. Boom! The will of the deed of thorough comprehension was released to the extreme. His inner energy was like burning, roaring. More and more halberds of time and space formed within his body. They floated around his body and became a part of it, creating a time and space matrix lying in the void sky. The halberds of time and space was projected to the front, but were smashed into pieces by more and more stars. Go! Dazzling beams of light pierced into the sky. The complete void and Yi Futian became one. The matrix of the time and space was projected, and the halberd of endless time and space thrust through the void air at the same time, and pierced everything. Boom, boom, boom! The falling stars exploded and smashed into fragments. The halberd of time and space pierced a hole in the boundless void sky. Yi Futian was very spirited and took a step forward. Suddenly, the great law hummed between the sky and earth. The 13th steel appeared above the divine martial road. This moment people knew Yi Futian had also taken the 12th step. For warriors had all taken the 12 steps. Just one more step, they would tie the record of the last peach banquet. Among these 4 people who could take the step, the sword moved. On the divine martial road, 13 swords whizzed ahead. The flows of sword will surged above the sky dome, as if one sword pushed another sword forward, each one stronger than the last. Was it the power used by Pei Min on the divine martial road? Nobody knew what happened on the divine martial road. All they could see was the change in the sky. The 13 swords were inclined to merge as one and kept going. They kept making metallic clangs and whooshing sounds. Even though no one could see the scene in the divine martial road, they could still imagine how strong-willed Pei Min was when he fought with his swordsmanship. The sword intended to rise in the sky. It was swallowing and spitting very horrifying sword will. The 14th sword loomed as if it was about to be formed. But right this moment, a destructive beam of sword light flashed by and annihilated everything. All of a sudden, the sword in formation directly disappeared, and the 13 swords which had been formed turned into ashes in a second. The swords were all gone. A figure soon showed up at the gate of the divine martial road. He was shaken out from the road. He let out a low moan, and a bit of blood oozed out of his mouth. Pei Min came out of the divine martial road. He finally didn't succeed in taking the 13th step. Would the other 3 warriors make it? Over the 3 ancient roads on the divine martial road, violence broke out at the same time, thunder continually booming in the sky. On the ancient road where Xingkai belonged to, 13 ancient bells hummed at the same time. Very horrifying strong light emitted from the ancient bells. Above the ancient bells, a gust of stuffy might enveloped the sky. The ancient bells became one and resonated in some way, trembling. On the other side, the aura of the poleaxes was also scorching and became brighter and brighter. On the 3rd ancient road, dazzling light of stars erupted from the starry steel. The 3 warriors must be undergoing huge pressure. It was just that they couldn't see. The sky and earth were roaring, rumbling. The 13 ancient bells trembled even harder. Finally, bong! A loud sound came, trembling the sky, resonating on the divine mountains. The 13 ancient bells resonated with it. All of a sudden, the bell rang without an end, making everyone's eardrum tremble. Their stares froze on the gorgeous scene on the divine martial road. The 14th ancient bell was formed. Xingkai took the 13th step. The sound of bells resonated in people's ears. Even the seniors on the divine mountain were quite surprised. Xingkai was defeated by Yi Futian in the final battle last time. And this time, he seemed to succeed in defending his self-esteem with his action. He was still Xingkai, the warrior who rode the whirlwind in the ancient imperial city. He tied the record created by the strongest warrior in the last peach banquet, and took the 13th step. The morale of people of the ancient imperial city was very high, especially Xing Qiu, who looked extremely excited. They all had to swallow the humiliation in the previous battle, and had nowhere to release the pressure. Until now, when Xingkai took the 13th step, they felt all the depression in their chest was suddenly cleared out. Were Yi Futian and Yu Xing able to take the 13th step? They clenched their fists and stared toward the sky above the other 2 ancient roads. The moment Xing Qiu turned his eyes to that scene, he saw an unusual aura. Poleaxes chopped down from the sky dome cleaved open the skies and streaked across the sky. The world was almost split into half. The 14th poleaxe appeared on the ancient road. Xing Qiu suddenly looked dumbfounded. And it was not only Xing Qiu. Everyone on the divine mountain was stunned at the scene too. Xingkai had just taken the steps that the strongest warrior took during the last peach banquet. And everyone thought that Xingkai had washed away the shame. But after just one moment, Yu Xing told the world. Yu Xing could do it too. 13 steps. Yu Xing didn't even show up in the last trial, and directly surrendered. But this time, obviously he didn't do this. But how? Xing Qiu couldn't believe his eyes. During the last peach banquet, only one person was taking the 13th step on the divine martial road, which meant the step was almost the symbol of perfection on the divine martial road. extremely hard to achieve. Just now, Xingqiu's brother Xingkai made it. But before he felt excited about it, Yuxing soon took the 13th step forward, too. The step of perfection. Not only Xingqiu, but other warriors were also all shocked by the scene. Yu Sheng of the Thousand Leaves City stepped out too, just like Xingkai. Warriors of the Peach Banquet this term had surpassed warriors of the last term on the Divine Martial Road. Look there, someone yelled. On the last ancient road, gleaming stars of the Great Law flew and shone on the steel. Starry steels lay over one another. Horrifying deep boom trembled the air, as if a starry world was there. A new steel was just formed. That was the 14th starry steel. Many people around it were speechless after Xingkai and Yu Sheng. Yi Futian made it too. How could this most extraordinary figure in the last battle fall behind? He could also do the thing that Xingkai was able to do. These three warriors tied the record of the last term. This time the Peach Banquet was so crazy. So next, would any one of them break the ultimate record of the last time? The ancient bells began to hum, releasing dazzling aura, as if trying to ring again. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed there. If Xingkai could continue taking steps, it was very likely that he would leave Yi Futian and Yu Sheng behind on the 13th step. At this moment, on the Divine Martial Road, warriors were unaware of things happening outside. Even though it was uproar outside, what they faced on the Divine Martial Road was nothing but the terrifying power in front of them. Xingkai was standing in front of the huge ancient bell. He took a deep breath. Xingkai had known he had tied the record of the last Peach Banquet and taken the 13th step. He had tried his best. He believed the 13 steps would leave others behind him. As for the 14th step, that would be a challenge for himself. Xingkai released his life force to his limit. It was the strongest degree he could reach. The life spirit had already been summoned and merged into the heaven-punishing fighting will. Xingkai turned into a burly ancient god of war. The intimidating will exploded from his body and fought against the power of the ancient bell. The might above the ancient bell was extremely powerful, like the might of heaven. It was an existence that vanquished all the beings of the world. Xingkai had a feeling that the ancient bell contained the will of the deities, and all life forms in the world would have to yield to its might. It was the moment he felt the threat. Xingkai lifted his foot. The will to fight was abundant in his sharp eyes. This step was not about success or failure. He had tried his best. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Ancient bells were shaking above the Divine Martial Road. Numerous people stared hard there. Ancient bells were shaking above the Divine Martial Road. Numerous people stared hard there. Would the 15th ancient bell appear? Would Xingkai break the highest record of the last Peach Banquet and take out the 14th step? The whirring sound echoed between the sky and earth, as if the bell would start to ring with just one more step. Boom! After a loud sound, all turned into ashes. The ancient bells kept exploding, turning into pieces. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the scene. Many people took a deep breath. Finally, it didn't ring. Xingkai was just one step away. At that moment, many people thought the 14th bell would start to ring, but it finally failed to do so. A figure showed up at the gate of the Divine Martial Road. It was Xingkai. He was shaken out of the Divine Martial Road by the ancient bell. However, Xingkai didn't show any frustration on his face. He had done all he could within his limit, and had taken out the ultimate 13th step. He felt humiliated, because Yi Futian defeated him in the last battle. The trip of Divine Martial Road should be able to help him save some face, and prove himself to the world. The violent airflows whipped his face. Xingkai's clothes were blowing in the strong wind. He stabilized his body movement. Although he was a little hurt, his breath gradually calmed down. Xingkai exhaled a deep, thick breath. All the fierce torrents around him disappeared. Xingkai looked forward. In just one moment, Xingkai's eyes froze there. He raised his head and looked at the scene above the Divine Martial Road, speechless. Those 14 poleaxes and 14 starry steels were so eye-catching and shocking to him. Beside him, 2 other warriors also made it. And they were still inside, and were trying to challenge the 14th step just like how he did. Who was still in there? He looked around. The divine mountain was quiet right now. Although many watched him, there was no awe or admiration. Even Shuzi didn't express any admiration or excitement for what he had achieved. He had been used to this. He usually never cared about it at all. But today, after having just experienced defeat not long ago, he suddenly craved that kind of feeling. However, there was none. Who were the people who took the 13th step just like him? He had a rough guess, and his face turned gray. He asked the people who had come out, "Who is still there?" Shuzi looked toward him with a pair of gorgeous eyes. She said softly, "Yi Futian and Yu Sheng." She knew these two names were what Xing Kai least wanted to hear. Xing Kai had done his job perfectly. With 13 steps, he tied the record of the last peach banquet. The score would have been outstanding at any other time. However, only this time it was different. Due to the rivalry between Thousand Leaves City and Ancient Imperial City, Xing Kai was defeated by Yi Futian, and Xing Qiu was beaten by Yu Xing many times. Although Xing Kai had not kept all these things in mind, this time, he wanted to prove himself to be more outstanding than Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. However, things didn't turn out the way he wanted. The only people who were still in there fighting at the same level as Xing Kai happened to be Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. So, even though Xing Kai could tie the record, what was the point? Yi Futian had defeated him in the last battle. Even if it was a tie this time, he still lost. So, what Xing Kai had done was meaningless. Even though he had made a rough guess, when these two names came out of Shu Zi's mouth, his face turned sullen. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng, were they still able to do what he could do on Divine Martial Road? Besides, they seemed to be still heading forward. Of course, he didn't believe it was possible. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were incapable of taking the step. At this moment, above the Divine Martial Road, a violent storm surged. It rumbled in the sky. The light of poleaxe enveloped the sky like a horrifying wave crazily pushing forward. The sky turned into a battlefield. It was as if tens of soldiers with poleaxes and thousands of horses were roaring there. Yu Sheng was challenging his 14th step. Xing Kai was reluctant to believe Yi Futian and Yu Sheng could make it, so he thought it was impossible. But others were not like him. Many people expected to see the miracle arrive. Boom! A strong beam of light erupted. A poleaxe seemed to appear over the sky dome, which split all skies and chopped all roads of the Great Law into half. The next moment, people witnessed the birth of a matchless poleaxe. The moment when the poleaxe appeared, numerous pairs of eyes were fixed on it and froze there. Was he about to succeed? Xing Kai's pupils were also contracting. He watched the scene stunned. The 14th step? He took the 13th step and tied the record of the last peach banquet. He thought it was the limit, so even he couldn't make it. He thought he wouldn't feel bad. Since the 14th step was the historical limit of the peach banquet, the highest record since the peach banquet was first held, he wouldn't feel bad, even though he couldn't make it. However, that poleaxe was being gradually formed. Until that moment, the giant poleaxe lay over the Divine Martial Road, swallowing and spitting the intimidating halo of bat leaks. The axe seemed to be able to chop off everything in the world. The 15th axe appeared. Yu Sheng tied the historical record. Did it mean another historical figure would appear in the peach banquet? During the last battle, Yi Futian beat Xing Kai, and at this moment, Yu Sheng tied with the past record on the Divine Martial Road. These two guys of Thousand Leaves City, today guests of the peach banquet, were all the most outstanding top figures of Crimson Dragon Realm. Doctrine Saints and True Self Saints listed on the regional king ranking were all present. However, even among such a lineup, nobody could steal Yu Sheng and Yi Futian's spotlight. They won over everyone else and stole all the attention. They triumphed over so many extraordinary figures: Xing Kai, Pei Min, Luo Yang, etc. Yu Sheng, who gained fame during the Battle of Crimson River, had been proved to be stronger than the world had assumed, and more strong-willed. Interesting, murmured Qi Shang. He no longer looked unconcerned. Such a score was not only just outstanding, it tied history. Besides, Yi Futian and Xing Kai also tied with the past record of the last peach banquet. How striking the score was this time! The look on Xing Kai's face constantly changed. Even his heart for the law had a wisp of fluctuation. Although he had been defeated by Yi Futian before, He believed that Futian was not actually stronger than him in terms of real strength. Even when Futian comprehended the 1,000 characters steel better than him, he was still confident he could defeat Futian. That was why he took steps aggressively on the divine martial road and stayed ahead of everyone else. But what was the result? Futian and Yuxing did what he could do. Now Yuxing even surpassed him. At this moment, dazzling stars shone between the sky and earth. People's hearts were slightly stirred. It was as if they were being triggered by something. They all looked up to another road, amazement in their eyes. At this moment, the silence on the divine mountain was somehow horrifying. Nobody said anything. They just looked at the dazzling stars in the sky. The starry light enveloped the sky where a giant steel was formed. Many people's hearts suddenly thumped. They trembled at the scene. Wasn't it crazy? This peach banquet was going wild. 14 steps, another 14 steps. He tied Futian and Yusheng, these two warriors of Thousand Leaves City, were now tied at the same time, leaving Xing Kai far behind. Before long, when they saw Xing Kai take the 13th step, they all thought Xing Kai was proving his ability. But at this moment, many people even began to sympathize with Xing Kai. He was not mediocre at all. He had tied the record of the last peach banquet, and was just one step away from breaking the historical record. Literally one step. Wasn't that outstanding enough? Who could imagine that the two warriors after him would both surpass him? And unfortunately, both of them had a grudge. How embarrassing this scene was for Xing Kai. Xing Kai made a humph in a low voice when Yusheng tied the record. Even though he felt frustrated and struggled, losing the pride in himself, he could accept it since Yusheng was far behind him in the last battle. However, Futian took the step too. What was that? It was such a smack in his face. Xing Kai was slightly hurt, but because his mood was not bad, and his will was stable, after the trial on the divine martial road, his willpower had become stronger, and his heart for the law was firm. But soon after it, he had to suffer the strike, which was heaviest for him. One could imagine how drastic the change of Xing Kai's state of mind was in this peach banquet. Now he truly began to question himself. His heart for the law was no longer that firm. His state of mind was damaged, and that was why he let out a humph in a low voice. Shuzi heard it. She looked toward Xing Kai quite worried. She knew that Xing Kai was an outstanding person, full of pride, but this time, he suffered a series of breakdowns. What kind of shock should be brought to his state of mind? All of a sudden, Xing Kai had undergone numerous changes in his state of mind. He wanted to stabilize his heart for law and strengthen his belief, but it was still too hard to achieve. His faith faltered. That was it. Even though he understood all the cultivation paths of the world, and knew that the truth of the law was that no one could triumph forever, it was only a hazy notion for him. And when it happened to him, it was not easy to realize it. At this moment, Xing Kai was clear that he actually couldn't see through it. He was reluctant to admit it. It was hard to acknowledge it, but it had been the fact. Futian and Yusheng had surpassed him on the divine martial road. Futian also surpassed him in the last comprehension battle. Futian performed better than him in 2 battles back to back. What did that mean? Did he still have the confidence to say he was capable to beat Futian, while in the same plane, depending on real strength? Who would think like this? Everyone would think Futian was stronger than Xing Kai after the peach banquet. Even though he could ignore others, how would he get through it when facing his own heart? Xing Kai was not the only one who had inner struggles. At this moment, some people were excited to witness history, while some people were also in an awful mood, like Xing Kai, Xing Qiu, Xing Zhe and Xing Nan, who begrudged Futian. They were all very mad. But even though they were mad, things had happened. This time, at the peach banquet, Futian and Yusheng had made history. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. In the divine martial road, Futian stood there. All the stars in the sky turned into a gorgeous Milky Way. It seemed like the starry sky was hidden inside the steel, a divine steel. In the divine martial road, Futian stood there. All the stars in the sky turned into a gorgeous Milky Way. It seemed like the starry sky was hidden inside the steel, a divine steel. One starry steel was one sky. One starry steel was one world. Boundless sprinkles of starry light dropped down, as if the whole world was under seal. The light fell on Yi Futian's body like a starry sky was over him. His body couldn't move at all. The light projected from the steel seemed to be the will of the great law originally contained by the starry steel. Yi Futian perceived the power. He had released his willpower to the extreme. His body was the cauldron of the great law, making a deafening noise. He raised his head to see the starry steel. It was as if his eyes had seen through endless layers of starry skies. He looked into the steel and saw a matchless figure standing there. His willpower was unparalleled. The willpower was attached to the boundless aura of starry light. Yi Futian had to bear the intense pressure from each bump. He would directly be shaken out if he relaxed a little bit. So that's how it is, murmured Yi Futian to himself. It was not until this moment that he truly understood the meaning of the divine martial road. Qi Shang didn't announce the meaning behind the road, and very probably, all the warriors who stepped on the divine martial road didn't realize it either. If he had not owned some special abilities, he would have not figured out either. Yu Sheng should be the only one here, Yi Futian said to himself and then laughed. He slightly relaxed and slowed down. The indomitable spirit and willpower seemed to have gone. It was as if he was glad to let it go. The endless light in the starry sky was like trying to devour him. Amid the whirlwind of the stars, his body spun and was thrown out of the divine martial road. Yi Futian appeared outside the divine martial road. A glaring halo surrounded his body. He glided backward for a short while and soon stopped moving. The life force on his body gradually cleared at a steady pace. Even after he had taken the 14th step, he didn't experience severe shaking after he came out. He still looked quite secure in a proper manner. Numerous pairs of eyes fell on Yi Futian. Finally he came out. He was still not able to break the historical record. But it was normal since even though he didn't break the historical record, he had tied it, which was precious enough. Undoubtedly, Yi Futian was the most eye-catching person in the peach banquet this time. He stole the limelight from so many people. And the only person who was comparable with him was his good friend Yu Sheng. Xing Kai's glance fell on Yi Futian. He had never seen Yi Futian as a rival before the peach banquet. But now in the public eye, Yi Futian was different from before. This Lord of Thousand Leaves City was very likely to become the most outstanding person in this generation that few people could match. In the vast land of Crimson Dragon Realm, even many figures whose names were listed on the regional king ranking were thwarted by him. Xia Qingyuan looked at Yi Futian. She walked to him and said in a low voice, "Why did you just come out?" Other people were stirred by Xia Qingyuan's words. He just came out. He took 14 steps and tied the record, and she said that he just came out. It was as if in her eyes, the step was not difficult at all for Yi Futian, and he could easily make it. Were 14 steps not enough? Xing Kai felt it irritating. Did she say it with irony? Yi Futian looked quite calm after he came out, and just watched the divine martial road quietly. I tried my best to finish the step, so I came out, Yi Futian said to Xia Qingyuan smiling. Xia Qingyuan looked at him and slightly lifted one eyebrow. Her intuition told her that Yi Futian didn't say the truth. This guy was definitely able to keep going and challenge the record. Probably, he himself chose to give up. Was it because he knew he and Yu Sheng were the only ones there, and he didn't want to compete with Yu Sheng? The aura of the poleaxe shone upon the divine martial road. A gigantic divine axe appeared above the sky dome. The whole divine martial road became almost transparent, and a figure loomed in the illusion. That person was Yu Sheng. At this moment, he was the incarnation of a demonic deity. Immense demonic will was released from his body. A poleaxe also appeared in his hand. He used the poleaxe to chop ahead, and with one strike, the sky was split into half. It was the absolute power, extremely intimidating. It was as if nothing could stop him. The light of the poleaxe flashed across the sky dome, as if it would chop off the divine mountain. A new record on the divine martial road was set. Yu Sheng from Thousand Leaves City broke the historical record and took out the 15th step. The howling wind surged in the upper sky. On the quiet divine mountain, Countless pairs of eyes looked at Yu Sheng. He finally made it. Even Qi Shang and the seniors on the Divine Mountain were bewildered by the scene. Who could expect that someone would break the record of Divine Martial Road during the Peach Banquet this time? He will be another legendary figure, an old man on the Divine Mountain remarked. True. It will take many years for later generations to break this record, another man said. The record created by Yu Sheng today probably would be exhibited in files for many years. Maybe no one will surpass the Peach Banquet of this year in at least 100 years, people on the Divine Mountain said. Obviously, they all thought highly of the Peach Banquet of this year. During the trip of Divine Martial Road in the Peach Banquet, one warrior created a new historical record. One warrior tied the historical record, and one warrior tied the record of the last term. It was supposed to be very extraordinary to tie the record of last time. But this time, apparently, the history was rewritten. Xing Kai had bad luck. Don't know if his state of mind will be affected, someone said. What Xing Kai had done was great enough at any previous time. However, he met Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. It seemed that Xing Kai in this Peach Banquet was a foil for Yi Futian and Yu Sheng to show their excellence. It must be a big shock to him, who was a proud person, which was revealed in his bad look after he came out. The glaring light shone upon Yu Sheng's shoulders. After a while, people saw him turn around and step out of the Divine Martial Road. He showed up in front of others, bathed in the divine aura. Congratulations, Qi Shang said to Yu Sheng smiling. Thank you very much, Your Highness. Yu Sheng nodded and replied to Qi Shang. Both Yu Sheng and Yi Futian had benefited from a lot during this trip. This Prince of Crimson Dragon Realm was indeed very generous. You earn it with your own effort. No need to thank me, Qi Shang said with a laugh. He soon turned to the crowd saying, I assume all of you have obtained gains on the Divine Martial Road. People all nodded. Every time they took a step, they could see more clearly the technique being used to attack them, and have a better understanding of it. It should be the original cultivation method of the Divine Martial Road. Since Yu Sheng broke the record, he might have obtained the complete version of it. But Yi Futian and Xing Kai should have also benefited a lot. It is an honor to witness the creation of a record during the Peach Banquet this time. I believe people of this generation will definitely create a new history. From now on, the future of the Crimson Dragon Realm will depend on you, said Qi Shang smiling. People had mixed feelings after hearing the words. If one could say people of this generation in Crimson Dragon Realm were able to create a new history, it was all because of the Thousand Leaves City. If Yu Sheng and Yi Futian were removed, the general ability of the Crimson Dragon Realm would be almost the same as before. Were these few people from the Emperor Xia's realm raising a storm in the Crimson Dragon Realm? So let's wrap up this Peach Banquet, continued Qi Shang. People's faces looked different. Some looked calm, but some were not willing to accept the result. Thank you, Your Highness. People showed respect and courtesy and requested to leave. Soon they all turned around and left there. Let's go, Yi Futian said to Yu Sheng and Xia Qingyuan. They left the place and met with Yi Wuqian and others. Soon their bodies flashed, and they left the Divine Mountain. People all walked down and left the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, many people made way for them. The way they looked at Yi Futian was different. The top of the Divine Mountain was covered with fallen peach flowers. The only person who hadn't leave was Yu Shifei. She was standing next to Qi Shang. Seeing people leaving, Yu Shifei turned to look at Qi Shang's face. What are you looking at? Said Qi Shang with a gentle smile. What is the secret hidden inside the Divine Martial Road? Asked Yu Shifei bluntly, without caring about her own identity. You want to know? Asked Qi Shang. Yes, said Yu Shifei nodding. But it's okay if you can't tell. There is nothing I can't tell, said Qi Shang with a laugh. Actually, the Divine Martial Road contains a matrix. When you step into the Divine Martial Road, you have to face not only the attack of the matrix's wills inside, but also clashes with other warriors. Your willpower will be merged in the will attack of other Divine Martial Roads. Luck is a factor to help you take the first few steps, but the warriors who come to the end are all. Yu Shifei had a strange look on her face. She said to Qi Shang, that is to say, All of us have indirectly fought with each other once without realizing it. You can say that, said Qi Shang, nodding. Yu Shifei laughed and said, so you can figure out every warrior's talent level and information without anyone noticing. Who set the rule for the peach banquet? He was really shameless. Aren't you afraid your future senior-in-laws hear that and don't allow you to enter my house? Qi Shang said jokingly. I am okay if they do it, said Yu Shifei, laughing softly. Nah, it will be my loss, Qi Shang said and took her in his arms. Obviously, their relationship was very good. They snuggled together and looked down at the scenery. Something seemed to occur to Yu Shifei, so she asked. When Yi Futian took the last step, there was not much fluctuation of life force on the divine martial road. Was it possible that he was aware of the truth of the divine martial road? So he finally gave up? Qi Shang showed a flash of surprise in his eyes after hearing Yu Shifei's words. Had he already seen through it? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. After warriors left the Divine Mountain, they respectively began their journey home, including Yi Futian and his companions. After warriors left the Divine Mountain, they respectively began their journey home, including Yi Futian and his companions. Wherever they arrived, they always received a lot of attention. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were both from the Thousand Leaves City. One could weigh their influence. And now, since they traveled together, they were always in the limelight of the Crimson Dragon realm wherever they went. Brother Yi. They heard someone calling when they were walking. Yi Futian followed the voice and found it was Duan Wuji, so he nodded to him, smiling. Come visit me in Eastern Imperial Palace if you have time, said Duan Wuji, laughing. To practice combat skills? Asked Yi Futian. Nah. Duan Wuji waved his hand. There was no way to practice combat with him. Duan Wuji used to have the thought, but after Duan Wuji experienced the peach banquet, he would just give up the idea. Yi Futian was too dangerous. He didn't want to bring trouble. Besides, Yu Sheng, the badass, was standing next to Yi Futian. He didn't want to mess with him either. If Yu Sheng fought him, he was afraid he would be killed. To have a drink. Yes, have a drink. Duan Wuji thought a while and said. Yi Futian heard his words and laughed and said, That's great. If one day I come, please don't forget my name, Your Highness. After today's peach banquet, there will not be many people in the land of the Crimson Dragon realm who don't know your name. I am afraid that later, I will need to wait in line to give you a treat, said Duan Wuji with a hearty laugh. He was speaking the truth. The peach banquet was called the #1 banquet of the realm, and soon all that had happened in the peach banquet would be known to the whole Crimson Dragon realm. The Lord of Thousand Leaves City Yi Futian and Yu Sheng would be hard to avoid being famous. Yi Futian laughed. Duan Wuji waved his hand and said, See you. And then he turned around and left. He was about to depart to return to the Eastern Imperial Palace. People were all on their way back. So many warriors were flying in the sky. Duan Wuji looks like a good guy. Last time, he helped you in Emperor Qua's relics, and was not jealous of the relics you got, said Xiaqing Yuan in a low voice. Yi Futian nodded. Duan Wuji was a trustful person, who was very different from Xing Kai. Perhaps it was because of the way they were raised. Duan Wuji was a prince, so he didn't need to compete with anyone else. What he owned was always the best. Xing Kai always had to take responsibility. Maybe he had always tried to be perfect and become the most brilliant person. He was proud and arrogant. Even though he said everyone had their time of failure, when he was defeated, he didn't show the detachment he claimed to have. He is worth befriending, said Yi Futian, nodding. And Yin Tianjiao, she is good too, said Xiaqing Yuan softly, looking ahead. Yi Futian got a strange look on his face. What was she talking about? Why did she mention Yin Tianjiao? At this moment, a strong gust of life force surged behind them. They had left the Imperial Palace a while ago, but the life force had just reached them. Having perceived the life force, Yi Futian and others turned their heads and took a look. 2 warriors of Nirvana Plain, the ex-lord of Thousand Leaves City Shen Tianzhan, and Wu Yong were also with Yi Futian. Emperor Qua's heritage caused the Battle of Thousand Leaves City. Although they successfully repelled the opponents, they still didn't dare to relax their vigilance. So this time when Yi Futian attended the peach banquet, 2 Nirvana Plain warriors of the Thousand Leaves City accompanied him. But at this time, 2 Nirvana warriors frowned. They turned their heads and looked into the distance and said in a low voice, "They are from the ancient imperial city." In the distance, amid the howling winds and clouds, warriors were coming near, not taking cover. The person who led the group was Xing Kai. This group of people swiftly caught up with Yi Futian and others, and walking with them shoulder to shoulder. Yi Futian resumed his steps and ignored them. But at this time, Xing Kai started talking. "Your performance in the peach banquet was quite impressive. I am curious about your real strength." His eyes slowly turned to where Yi Futian was. Yi Futian also looked toward him and said, laughing, "It should be good too." "I can't know if I don't try it," said Xing Kai. He directly rushed toward Yi Futian and released a gust of intimidating life force. People around Yi Futian frowned. Someone tried to block him. A chill flashed across Yi Futian's eyes. What did Xing Kai mean? He took a step and darted toward the direction where Xing Kai was. The deed of thorough comprehension suddenly erupted, and the horrifying life force enveloped his body. Although Yi Futian's performance in the peach banquet was eye-catching, he was not so conceited to think that he would easily beat Xing Kai. Xing Kai was the one who tied the record of last time, and his real plane was true self-plane, one level higher than Yi Futian's. There were huge gaps between different levels in the Saint Plane, not to mention that Xing Kai had already become a figure who rode the whirlwind in Crimson Dragon Realm. A giant palm print came in the howling sound of the wind. The palm print swallowed and spat glaring aura, which contained terrifying fighting will. In just one moment, the palm prints fell at an extremely fast speed. Yi Futian raised his arm and stepped into the void sky. The Huangting fist will exploded and continually punched into the air. The aura of the 11 fists became one and blasted toward the giant palm print. After a booming sound, the giant palm print and the aura of fist were both turned to ashes. Xing Kai stepped into the air and released his heaven-punishing fighting will. All of a sudden, wisps of fighting aura swept across the world. The halo of fighting will appeared above his body, resonating with the great law of the sky and earth. Countless beams of light of the great law flew over his body and formed a phantom of the deity of war. It was as if it was purely created by the fighting will. Besides, in the whole space, the area around Yi Futian's body was wrapped up by Xing Kai's fighting will. So much fighting will was directly turned into an enormous palm print, which smashed down from the sky dome. It was as if the explosion was from the deity of war. Yi Futian's body was fettered by the light. The halo dripped down and covered the sky, from where the palm print fell. Boom! When the deed of thorough comprehension exploded, spells of halberds appeared from the cauldron formed by his flesh, and transformed into divine halberds flying upward. Even a giant halberd of time and space was forged from there, and appeared in Yi Futian's hand. The aura of the halberd flew. Yi Futian took a step. He seemed to have deployed what he had learned not long before in his fighting. The halberd of time and space directly thrust out, and clashed with the dropping giant palm print. Endless light of halberd flew in the air, and formed into one spot. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the giant palm print, which contained horrifying fighting will. The light of halberd kept bumping against the spot, and immediately, more crevices showed up in the space. Boom! A horrifying explosion sound came. The halberd and the dropping giant palm print were smashed into ashes. Xing Kai started walking, and step by step, he came closer to Yi Futian. More palm prints of the great law were in formation, covering the sky and hiding the sun. Countless beams of light appeared above the phantom of the war deity behind him. The wind and clouds roared between the sky and earth. Even the appalling fighting will alone could crush and suffocate many. Yi Futian stood in front of Xing Kai, and felt a gust of very strong suppressing power, the suppressing power from the heaven-punishing fighting will. He looked at Xing Kai's eyes. He looked through that pair of cold eyes, as if trying to figure out what Xing Kai was thinking. He saw the chilly killing thought in Xing Kai's eyes. Having felt the killing thought, Yi Futian knitted his brows. Did Xing Kai want to kill him here? The howling sound came from the distance from time to time. Many warriors who had left from the peach banquet seemed to have perceived the disturbance and converged in the area. They showed interest after they reached the battlefield. Xing Kai was fighting with Yi Futian. What happened? Was it because Xing Kai was pissed off by Yi Futian's performance and wanted to teach him a lesson? Using this way to prove his dignity. But the thing was, Xing Kai was a saint of true self. His plane was higher than Yi Futian's. So even though he defeated Yi Futian, it couldn't prove anything. And on the other hand, people would think he was jealous of Yi Futian. At this moment, the palm print which enveloped the sky and hid the sun dropped down and covered that space. Xing Kai showed no mercy at all. At this moment, Yi Futian was almost buried inside the palm print of the great law that covered the sky and sun. Yi Futian released the deed of thorough comprehension to the extreme. A long halberd showed up in his hand amid the glaring aura. When the palm print dropped down, he immediately launched strikes and destroyed it. But the halberd was smashed into ashes by the fighting palm print after the clash. However, the dropping palm prints had no end. Obviously, the fight was much harder than the one he had with Xing Kai in the peach banquet. During the peach banquet, Xing Kai restrained his own will. But at this moment Xing Kai was just pitiless. Bam bam bam. Yi Futian's body shifted location and flickered in the air. He continued thrusting his halberd out and smashing the palm prints while at the same time taking shunning steps. Xing Kai let out a chilly humph. He stepped onto the sky dome. The illusions around him were extremely dazzling. He pushed down his palm, and the formed deity of war also followed his action and dropped a palm print. Suddenly, the endless palm prints above Yi Futian's head became one and turned into a real print of the war deity. The sky and earth were roaring, as if everything would be smashed into pieces. Yi Futian's body was below the palm print. The countless halberds pierced into the air and blew on the boundless giant palm print. But the unparalleled fighting aura just crushed them. Yi Futian raised his head and felt the might. The holy halberd of time and space appeared in his palm. It kept swallowing and spitting the aura of the great law. The fighting halberd formed by will was formed to smash everything into fragments. Hiss! Yi Futian rose up. His body transformed into a phantom. The halberd of time and space thrust out. The sky and earth kept buzzing, as if all would turn to ashes. The halberd was thrust into the palm print of the length of the sky, but it didn't break it. The palm print was like the real celestial might, exterminating everything in the world. The fighting will on the palm print turned into countless golden lightning, which dropped down and shot toward Yi Futian's body. The space was full of fierce power of destruction, trying to engulf and bury Yi Futian's body. "You are seeking death," said Xing Kai. A flash of chilly light ran across Xing Kai's eyes. He dared to take his attacks directly. The heaven-punishing fighting will turned into the light of catastrophe. Who could defend from this? Seeing the light of destruction in the vast space, many warriors were stunned for a moment, their hearts thumping hard. They suddenly realized that Xing Kai had not intended to practice combat skills with Yi Futian at all. Obviously, he was trying to kill Yi Futian. As they had thought, if Xing Kai just tried to beat Yi Futian, people would think he was bullying him with the plain advantage. Xing Kai was trying to erase Yi Futian. How ruthless! If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. At this moment, Xing Kai was indeed thinking of killing him. After a series of defeat, he asked himself whether or not he could just let it go. At this moment, Xing Kai was indeed thinking of killing him. After a series of defeat, he asked himself whether or not he could just let it go. During the peach banquet, he was overshadowed by Yi Futian twice, which had affected his heart for law. He felt Yi Futian had become the barrier on the way of his cultivation. It would be hard to enter the unblemished plane because of him. For Xing Kai, it was absolutely unacceptable. Anyone who hindered his cultivation was supposed to vanish, to be out of his sight. Thus, Yi Futian should be wiped out, and if possible, Xing Kai should kill him in person. In this way, Xing Kai could prove his heart for law. Not to mention the grudges Xing Kai had already had with Yi Futian. Yi Futian should be killed. Otherwise, he would become a scourge for the ancient imperial city. Xing Kai was also afraid that Yi Futian had harbored resentment because of the last battle since Gai Huang and Xing Qiu attacked them. Besides, his brother Xing Qiu was almost killed by Yu Sheng. All these factors let him make the decision to wipe Yi Futian out. The print of war deity contained unparalleled great law of oppression, and with the aid of heaven-punishing fighting will, it could seal all beings under one sky. The destructive golden lightning also contained the tearing law derived from the gold attribute and thunder attribute. There was nothing it couldn't destroy. It was very intimidating. Besides, the will of a true self-saint was much stronger than the one of a doctrine saint. How could Xing Kai show mercy when he had the intention of killing? The fighting power exploded from his body. Below the aura of destruction, it looked like Yi Futian could be wiped out at any time. The faces of the warriors of the Thousand Leaves City turned pale. They all knew what Xing Kai was going to do. Both Wu Yong and Shen Tianzhan were warriors of the Nirvana plane. Their reactions were instant. Seeing Xing Kai of the true self plane try to kill Yi Futian, they immediately released an immense amount of might. Between the sky and earth, the wind and cloud changed color. A gust of horrifying might of flame fell, and a giant blazing palm print appeared from the sky dome and smashed down toward Xing Kai. Boom! An intimidating beam of intense light shot out. Someone tried to block it directly in front of them. Gai Huang, who was wrapped in the aura of the Great Law, showed up. He cast his golden eyes on Shen Tian and Wu Yong. Obviously, he didn't allow Wu Yong and Shen Tian to disturb Xing Kai killing Yi Futian. Xing Kai was very resolute. Since he had decided to kill Yi Futian, he knew what to do. Using practicing combat skills as the excuse, Xing Kai would wipe Yi Futian out, exterminating this threat. Gai Huang! Shen Tianzhan shouted. He stepped forward. Gai Huang's real strength was powerful. In the Battle of Thousand Leaves City, he was blocked by the star-plucking hand. They want to keep practicing combat after the peach banquet. Why do you bother them? Gai Huang said coldly. His eyes reflected golden beams. The horrifying golden storm rose around his body and headed toward these two Nirvana plane warriors. One gust of very intimidating spatial great law came and intended to block all their ways. More and more warriors gathered around them. They looked up at these three godlike figures in the void sky and thought to themselves that obviously, Gai Huang was assisting Xing King in killing Yi Futian. It was not a practice. Xing Kai at this moment was trying to kill him. Xing Kai was a determined person. Yi Futian overshadowed him in the peach banquet, so he wanted to wipe Yi Futian out and exterminate this threat. If Yi Futian reached the true self plane, Xing Kai might not be able to suppress him anymore. In the battlefield where Xing Kai and Yi Futian were, the destruction print of war deity crushed Yi Futian. The endless golden lightning fell from the print of the war deity and sealed him in this space, trying to kill him. The halberds kept shattering in his hand. Yi Futian held out his palm. The divine halberd of time and space appeared on the palm, swallowing and spitting intimidating might. Boom! A strong shaking began. People could see Yi Futian didn't pause under the burning pressure of the might of great law, but rather kept heading forward against the force. He took one more step, his spirit rising, roaring. The halberd of time and space swallowed and spat endless light that tore the space apart. It clashed with the golden lightning that fell down the sky dome. These two forces were getting extremely close, each containing horrifying energy of tearing destruction. When they collided in the void sky, the space where Yi Futian was submerged in tens of thousands of beams of catastrophe light. He stood inside and bore the killing power of the Saint Law. Bam! He took one more step. The footwork of Xianyuan was strengthened. All the law of the sky and earth was being smelted above the body. The energy released from the deed of thorough comprehension converged in the center of his palm and slipped into the halberd of time and space in his hand. The halberd swallowed and spat endless aura. The print of war deity dropped from his head, as if the sky would collapse. Boom! Yi Futian took the third step. His body spun, and a terrifying beam of light rose into the sky. The halberd of time and space in his hand thrust out. At this moment, the spatial beam of light rushed toward the sky. In the vast space between the sky and earth, a boundless giant divine halberd appeared and wrapped the halberd of time and space inside. It directly pierced on the falling print of war deity. After a loud boom, the destructive might swept across the world. The sky and earth trembled, and the print of war deity roared. Above, the giant divine halberd in the aura, that pierced through the print of war deity, held the sky dome, and blocked the oppression of the falling print of war deity. Yi Futian's torso was glaring in the holy aura that enveloped the sky and echoed the great law. He raised his head and looked up to the sky. The halberd light penetrated the clouds, like the light that unlocked heaven, but it didn't completely destroy the print of war deity. Shinkai's heaven-punishing fighting will claim to be the heritage from the War of God. When it was infused in the fighting power, the might of the war deity could explode from it and slay gods. Shinkai's attack was always powerful, and with the aid of heaving punishing fighting will, it was devastating. The roaring sound between the sky and earth continued. The boundless giant phantom of the war deity stood above the sky dome. Shinkai stepped into the void sky, extreme coldness in his eyes. His palm pushed down toward the ground. Immediately, the phantom of the war deity followed his action and used his palm to push down. The print of war deity kept falling, trying to crush Yi Futian. He wouldn't give up until Yi Futian died. The giant light of halberd was being devoured. What was above Yi Futian's sky was no longer just one divine seal. It was more like a sky that kept crushing down on him. He was not able to move. He was on the edge of being crushed to death. Even the halberd of time and space was unable to defend from the print of war deity. Other warriors saw the scene and were stirred. How intimidating Shinkai's real fighting strength was. He was always the peerless top figure in the Crimson Dragon realm. He had never been defeated, and was always listed on the regional king ranking. He was of the true self plane. But even other outstanding figures of the plane had difficulty defending him. He was supposed to wipe out any doctrine saint quickly. However, Yi Futian could fight with him. One could tell this Lord of Thousand Leaves City, who left great impressions during the Peach Banquet, indeed had very horrifying fighting power. If it had been another person fighting with Shinkai, they would have been killed after the print of war deity showed up. At the same time, from another direction, warriors of the Thousand Leaves City were quickly heading toward this battlefield. Obviously, it was not a fair duel, and Shinkai's goal was not to practice with Yi Futian. He was trying to kill him. He wanted to exterminate him as a threat. Warriors from the ancient imperial city started to take action too. They all began to move and blocked the way of warriors of the Thousand Leaves City. Seeing the scene, Shinkai again drew one hand and created one more print. Two prints overlapped and oppressed all the skies. The loud booming sound came, and Yi Futian's body was about to be crushed down by the great might of the great law. The giant light of the divine halberd was still collapsing. Yi Futian perceived the pressure, and suddenly, an aura of stars appeared around his body. Endless starry light erupted. The vast space between the sky and earth turned into a starry world. Stars were formed in the new world. The stars of the great law rotated and rose to the upper sky. Boom, boom, boom. People saw the stars clash on the print of the war deity. The void sky trembled for it. But the moment when the stars touched the print of the war deity, they were just ground into ashes. All they did was slightly slow down the fall of the print of war deity. However, the light of the stars grew brighter. Yi Futian was amid the world of stars. Endless stars spun and rotated around him. Under the deed of thorough comprehension, a holy halo appeared and formed a plane of stars. At this moment, stars all over the sky became one and formed an intact starry steel, where stars of all skies were included. People who watched the scene from a distance contracted their pupils, stunned. Wasn't it the starry steel of the divine martial road in the Peach Banquet? It was the road that Yi Futian was on at that time. Did it mean Yi Futian had absorbed it and used it in the fight after he stepped out of the divine martial road? Stars were moving. The boundless starry steel rose with the stars of all skies and smashed on the print of the war deity. The sky dome shivered violently, as if it was about to collapse. Holding the halberd of time and space, Yi Futian shifted away and rushed out of the restraint power of the great law. He strode over the space and headed toward Shinkai. Shinkai took a glance at Yi Futian with disdain. The gap between their planes was too large. If he had been a common person, Yi Futian might be able to win over him. But he was Xing Kai, who had never been defeated. If Yi Futian could ignore the plain difference and defeat him, he would give up cultivation from now on. A beam of horrifying halberd light thrust out. Yi Futian threw out the halberd of time and space, which pierced through the Great Law, and thrust toward Xing Kai. The halo of the Great Law flew above Xing Kai's 2 arms, and linked between the sky and earth. Gorgeous golden halos darted out and blocked the attacks of the halberd of time and space. At the same time, he stretched out both arms, which penetrated the void sky and broke into the Great Law. 2 forces clashed with each other. Yi Futian's advancing force was pushed back, but his spirit was not weakened at all. At the same time, a gust of forceful demonic might came in. Xing Kai raised his head and saw another person arrive from the sky. Yu Sheng held a dazzling poleaxe in his hand and chopped down from the sky dome. The demonic light illuminated the sky. As the poleaxe chopped off, it opened the sky as if directly chopping the sky dome into half. "You came just in time," said Xing Kai. His eyes turned toward Yu Sheng, full of coldness and a stronger killing desire. During the peach banquet, both Yu Sheng and Yi Futian had excellent performance, and since Yu Sheng actively came to fight with him, he didn't need to consider the regional palace. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Seeing the poleaxe chopping down, Xing Kai faced the sky and let out a roar. Horrifying will exploded from his body, and a dazzling beam of light rose up to the sky. Endless fighting will was merged into his body, as if a war deity was rumbling. The bellow trembled Sheng's mind, and slightly affected his impelling force of the poleaxe. Seeing the poleaxe chopping down, Xing Kai faced the sky and let out a roar. Horrifying will exploded from his body, and a dazzling beam of light rose up to the sky. Endless fighting will was merged into his body, as if a war deity was rumbling. The bellow trembled Sheng's mind, and slightly affected his impelling force of the poleaxe. Phantoms of ancient bells showed up, and surged forward following the sound waves. They turned into an immense amount of will, and formed an excellent barrier for the poleaxe. Xing Kai raised his hand, and drew a big palm print toward the void sky. He stretched out one arm, which turned into a golden forelimb. When the palm print was released, it crashed onto the poleaxe with the heaven-punishing fighting will, and blew Yu Sheng's heaven-breaking poleaxe away. Yi Futian took a glance at Yu Sheng. Even though Xing Kai was 1 level higher than Yu Sheng, he was the first person of this generation who face-to-face shocked Yu Sheng that Yi Futian had ever met. Regardless of Xing Kai's character, his real strength was undoubtedly very strong. He claimed to be War Emperor Zhanzi's successor, and owned the heaven-punishing fighting will inherited from the ancient war deity. He was the most peerless warrior in the Crimson Dragon realm. His way of doing things was brutal too. Before, he had never thought about competing with Yi Futian in the peach banquet. Xing Kai had not regarded him as the opponent at the time. But after the peach banquet, Xing Kai felt a threat from them. Or one should say, things that happened in the peach banquet affected his state of mind. So he wanted to kill Yi Futian and Yu Sheng to prove his own heart for law, and to exterminate the potential threat for the future. Since his state of mind couldn't accept them, he chose to kill them. He was resolute in this. On his way back from the peach banquet, he used practicing combat skills as an excuse, and wanted to wipe them out forcibly. In fact, the rule of Crimson Dragon City didn't allow random killing in the city. Not to mention that Yi Futian had just left the Divine Mountain not long ago. His performance in the peach banquet was outstanding. When Xing Kai thought about killing him, shouldn't he have taken the Imperial Palace on the Divine Mountain into consideration? But Xing Kai still was going to do it. He was cold-blooded indeed. However, even so, he said it was for practicing combat skills. He could still use it as an excuse. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were both standing in the air and staring at Xing Kai. The spirits of 3 of them were all very intimidating. Numerous people were staring at this battlefield, astounded by the scene. The most extraordinary 3 warriors in the peach banquet were face-to-face fighting with each other. The heaven-punishing fighting will came out from Xing Kai's body, and swept across the world, turning into gusts of horrifying airflows. His light of life spirit shone behind him, from which a real figure of war deity showed up. The life spirit contained horrifying heaven-punishing fighting will and surrounded every part of his body. Xingkai slowly merged into the figure and turned into a war deity. His body started to move at a low pace. At this moment his life force reached the climax. Since you two want to fight together, come on, show me what you can do, Xingkai said loudly while looking at Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. Around the battlefield, other warriors tried to help, but Yi Futian stopped them. Xia Qingyuan took a glance at him. Yi Futian raised one arm in the air, suggesting for others not to intervene. Since Yu Sheng had entered the battlefield, he also wanted to see how powerful this greatest true self-saint in Crimson Dragon realm was. Demonic will billowed above Yu Sheng's body. Many demonic phantoms showed up. Demonic flows gushed out and swept between the sky and earth. A demonic deity-like figure showed up behind him. His body of demonic law merged inside and turned into a figure of a peerless demonic god. Above Yi Futian's body, the deed of thorough comprehension emitted glaring light. The aura of the Great Law enveloped the sky and earth. The body of the Great Law formed in Yi Futian's body, emitting beams of light and echoing the Great Law of the sky and earth. His figure kept expanding. The fighting Dharma itself was not powerful. When a fighting Dharma was first established, the warrior was only at the apex of Sage Plane. Still, in a real fight, if the fighting Dharma fit with the Saint Plane, it could connect the law between the sky and earth and break the limit of the warrior's flesh, creating a rousing echo between the sky and earth. It would help the warrior's flesh make a breakthrough until the warrior was stronger than his or her own plane. The fighting Dharma could be put into practice in a better way when the user reached the Saint Plane, since it was able to fit with the Great Law. Especially when the deed of thorough comprehension was released, it could make the fighting Dharma transform, and Yi Futian could coalesce any will into it. At this moment, the Dharma in formation contained very strong spatial and starry will. Xingkai was good at attacking, and his fighting ability was peerless. Only an equivalent counterforce could suppress its power. In Yi Futian's life palace, the ancient tree was emitting glaring light. Yi Futian's body was echoing with all the skies. Between the sky and earth, countless beams of light fell on his body. Boundless will of the Great Law merged into his body. With the power of the deed of thorough comprehension, his Dharma was built extremely strong. Boom! At this moment, the void sky sent an intense shiver. Xingkai took a step forward. The halo of Great Law around his body coalesced into an endless golden spear. It was extremely intimidating. He raised one palm, and suddenly many giant golden spears came out and pierced through the sky and earth. Divine golden light penetrated the space and darted toward Yu Sheng and Yi Futian. Xingkai of the true self-saint plane was trying to kill two peerless figures at the same time. Behind Yu Sheng, tens of thousands of phantoms loomed out. Above all the skies, a demonic space was created. The demonic will surged forward and engulfed all the skies. Those demonic statues let out mysterious demonic tunes, trembling in people's ears. At this moment, wind and cloud changed their color above the sky dome. They changed their dark demonic color. Demons of all skies raised their hands at the same time and drew demonic palm prints toward the lower sky, covering the sky and hiding the sun, devouring the sky dome. The palm prints struck toward Xingkai's incoming spear. When the palm prints and the spear clashed, the void sky was about to collapse. However, from another direction, Yi Futian stepped into the void sky. When the footwork of Xian Yuan came out, the void sky shivered. He stretched out two arms and thrust the halberd of time and space. The attack of the halberd contained the destructive space-tearing will and the intimidating power of stars. Flares like falling stars appeared between the sky and earth. The light of halberd turned into dazzling falling stars and struck toward the incoming spear. Two gusts of forces collided and together annihilated in the sky dome. Gorgeous light sprinkled down and burned people's eyes. Boom! Xingkai did not sway. He stepped into the void sky like the war deity's incarnation. At this moment he was the war deity himself. The heaven-punishing fighting will surged out, and his spirit reached the apex. Not to mention a doctrine saint, It was rare for the strongest warrior of the true self to own such a horrifying spirit. Xingkai's goal was not just being a true self-saint. He wanted to become a Renhuang. The unblemished plane and nirvana plane were just stages on his way of cultivation. So he would never let Yi Futian blemish his heart for law. Yi Futian must be killed here. Xingkai stretched out two hands. Suddenly, the endless fighting will between the sky and earth coalesced into a divine golden poleaxe. The boundless poleaxe was extremely sharp. It was held in Xingkai's hand and chopped forward. The light of the poleaxe chopped down the void air between the sky and earth. A golden line appeared and crossed over the sky dome. The poleaxe chopped toward Yu Sheng and Yi Futian at the same time. He seemed to be able to infuse the heaven-punishing fighting will into any derived weapons and ignite an explosion of appalling fighting skills. The power was infinite and unstoppable. There was a coldness in Yu Sheng's eyes. The demonic will from his body got stronger. The sounds from the demonic statues echoed, trembling the sky and earth. Tens of thousands of demonic palm prints surged out, rumbling, and finally turned into a horrifying demonic palm print, striking toward the incoming light of poleaxe. Yi Futian kept treading in the air, highly spirited. The life force of his dharma grew stronger, echoing with the great law between the sky and earth. The halberd of time and space in his hand launched one more strike. His appearance was like galloping thunder. Endless light of halberd converged in one spot, and thrust into the incoming poleaxe light bit by bit, tearing the shadow of the poleaxe. The aura of destruction surged out from his body. Horrifying flows beat up his body, but his body of stars was still not affected. Xingkai lightly lifted eyebrows. These two warriors were still not shaken even after two intimidating attacks. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were getting even more spirited as they fought. The spirit surged from their bodies and got even stronger. That was why Xingkai felt threatened by them. If Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were still alive, they would become the biggest threat for Xingkai in Crimson Dragon Realm. He continued stepping forward. The giant golden poleaxe in his hand chopped out. That giant figure of war deity moved slowly, but it contained an intimidating might. Every time the poleaxe chopped out, the sky and earth trembled. Beams of poleaxe light chopped off the void sky and buried Yu Sheng and Yi Futian's bodies inside. Every attack used a fighting skill that was fatal to a true self-saint. If they hit a target, the person's body would be split in half. Even though Yi Futian and Yu Sheng's physiques were extraordinary, they didn't dare to bear such attacks using their fleshes. Tens of thousands of demonic statues let out the same tune. The demonic will permeated the air and became one in the sky. Yu Sheng stood in the center, like a real demon king. All the demonic figures saluted him. He stretched one palm, and the appalling demonic will formed a demonic poleaxe in his hand. With one jump he rose into the sky. All these demonic statues groveled in front of him. An endless demonic light converged in his body. The poleaxe came out, and suddenly tens of thousands of beams of poleaxe light converged into one strike, and chopped off the great law. He chopped down all the attacks. His demon-like body darted toward Xingkai. It was as if nothing could stop him. Yi Futian continued heading forward. Every step he took raised his spirit even more. The halberd of time and space in his hand pierced through the sky and earth. The power was getting stronger. Every attack seemed to contain the momentum of the previous attacks. The power of attacks was increasing progressively. Even though Xingkai's fierce attacks kept destroying his defense, it couldn't stop him from marching forward. These three towering figures were fiercely fighting on the battlefield. The sky and earth kept rumbling. People's hearts thumped hard for Yu Sheng and Yi Futian, who kept approaching Xingkai despite his attacks. Were these two peerless doctrine saints able to triumph over Xingkai, the true self-saint? Xingkai claimed to be invincible among peers. Except for a few warriors who he didn't have a chance to fight, he had never been defeated by anyone in the regional palace. But now, these two lower-ranking warriors were challenging his power. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. In the Madare battlefield, Gai Huang overpowered Shen Tianzhan and Wu Yong, who were both holiness of nirvanas, all on his own. In the Madare battlefield, Gai Huang overpowered Shen Tianzhan and Wu Yong, who were both holiness of nirvanas, all on his own. Gai Huang was of immense renown, and he was an exceptional figure among the holiness of nirvanas found in the realm. He was deemed a truly terrifying figure, as he was lauded as one who stood at the pinnacle of the final plane of sainthood. He was so immensely powerful that he would be able to reign supreme in any realm found within the Crimson Dragon region. However, due to the debt he owed to the Ninth Servant, he spent most of his time training in ancient imperial city instead, and was considered a member of the city by all in Crimson Dragon realm. He held Xing Kai in extremely high regard, hoping that he would be able to continue Emperor Zhan's legacy and make it into Renhuang Plain. Even though Xing Kai was not someone he taught personally, he watched the younger man grow. Yet, there were two figures capable of threatening Xing Kai's existence in the Peach Banquet. Yi Futian managed to overpower Xing Kai in 2 battles. While Gai Huang was concerned for Xing Kai somewhat, the younger man's decision to act against Yi Futian made him realize that he needed not worry for Xing Kai after all. Xing Kai knew very well what he needed. He knew his mind better than anyone else. He was unable to accept Yi Futian managing to surpass him, and the idea of Yi Futian being able to reign above him in the future. As such, he decided to take Yi Futian out of the picture outright, furthering his progress in training by killing Yi Futian. Both men had not been on good terms to begin with. Xing Kai was thinking that if he were to deal the killing blow during the sparring session in Crimson Dragon City, the royal palace would not bother doing anything against him. Winner takes all after all. If Yi Futian died, he wouldn't have been such a big deal anyway. There was no doubt that Xing Kai picked the best opportunity to make his move. There was no way Gai Huang would have done anything that was not in Xing Kai's favor. He was not alone, as everyone from ancient imperial city would have done the same, making sure that Xing Kai was able to cut Yi Futian down in that very same place. However, Wu Yong and Shen Tianzhan did not let anyone else interfere when they saw Yi Futian and Yu Xing join hands. The 2 older men did not rush in to aid their juniors. They held their own against Gai Huang, stalling him on that battlefield instead. Both Wu Yong and Shen Tianzhan had extremely great faith in Yi Futian's powers. Furthermore, Wu Yong believed that even though Yi Futian paid a hefty toll when he last summoned Emperor Qua, everyone knew that it was not something that Yi Futian was able to do at will. Nonetheless, he could pull it again if his life were once again on the line. It went without saying that it would have only worked when he truly needed such powers. At that moment, there were 3 men in front of Yi Futian on the battlefield. Xing Kai frowned slightly. He was able to tell that Yu Sheng and Yi Futian were getting increasingly aggressive. None of them showed any signs of lethargy or dread from being overpowered. Both of them were enraged instead. Yu Sheng's devil bat leaks was brought down again and again. Every single blow felt like a devil trying to split the sky, cutting the space down right there and then. Yi Futian's halberd of space and time grew intensely powerful. Every single strike saw the might behind it burst. The light from the deed of thorough comprehension's power on his body grew increasingly intense. The might that burst with it seemed to have burned the great path around them. Attacks from both men posed increasingly great stress to Xing Kai. Xing Kai, who had become a saint of true self, was being pressured by attacks from 2 cultivators of lower planes. Xing Kai had never been one who would have bothered acting against anyone of planes lower than his, as he could have easily overwhelmed and taken them out without breaking a sweat. However, Yi Futian was one who forced his hand. He was worthy of him doing so. But then again, Xing Kai never expected that he was unable to take both men down outright. Instead, he began to sense a looming threat from both of them. Boom! The axe was brought down again. The air in the sky felt like all demons have returned to become a single being, melding into a shadow of a great, overbearing devil, overlapping with Yu Sheng's body. Boundless demonic auras washed throughout the space around them when the axe was brought down. The dark axes tore through the sky at the same time, especially the extremely terrifying one in the middle, trying to tear through Xing Kai's body. Xing Kai, who took the form of a god of war, shouted. Will of combat surged throughout Xing Kai, and his aura burst to maximum capacity. He stepped forth, and it looked as if one shadow of the Saint of War after another rushed outside his body. Every single shadow looked as if they came from him. What was more terrifying was that every single god of war's shadow was imbued with extremely terrifying spiritual willpower. It was as if every single one of them was Xing Kai himself. The shadows blasted divine seals at the same time. Their surroundings continued to shake, turning into tidal waves sweeping forward, clashing with Yu Sheng's bat leaks. It tore through the weapon's light. The waves eventually blocked the most devastating move that Yu Sheng was able to bring to bear, causing the weapon to rattle without stopping. All who witnessed the battle shook within. The three who were fighting right there, and then were indeed terrifying. Each of them was of an extreme embodiment of devastating offense, extreme physical resilience, and adamant spiritual will. All three of them possessed peerless head-on offensive capacities. It was a case of fighting a firestorm with a firestorm. Few would have been able to block attacks from someone as terrifying as Yu Sheng, whose devil-like bat leaks was brought down with force capable of leveling mountains. If Xing Kai had been at proving holiness level instead of a saint of true self, he probably would not have been able to stop one such overwhelming attack from Yu Sheng, which offered no mercy or no way out for its target. If Xing Kai were only taking on Yu Sheng, he would have still been able to handle it fine. The edge of his plane was obvious, and it was not something that could have been compensated for through tricks and skills alone. Furthermore, Xing Kai was a descendant of a Run Huang, inheriting the heaven-punishing fighting will, which made him near peerless in Crimson Dragon realm. However, Xing Kai was pressured. That was because he was not only fighting Yu Sheng. Devastating currents swept all over the place when the attacks of both men clashed. However, at that moment, a terrifying hurricane appeared in the midst of the chaotic space turbulence. The halberd of space and time was brought to bear within an instant. The glow of the stars glittered when the strike from the halberd lashed out, shining brightly in the sky, bashing right onto Xing Kai's god of war form. The rumble was continuously heard. The halberd struck right onto Xing Kai's defenses. Xing Kai's hurriedly attack after a rumble was heard. The incoming attack penetrated through Xing Kai's defensive powers and continued raging on. Xing Kai frowned and took one hard step forward. The light of the Great Path laid down screens of defense right away, before stopping Yi Futian's attack. Even so, a stifled rumble was nonetheless heard. What? The pupils of many who were watching the battle constricted somewhat. That attack from Yi Futian actually managed to tear through Xing Kai's defense. That had impossible before. It seemed as if the tables were turning without anyone realizing it. There were many who attended the peach banquet among the surrounding mighty ones. They had left before, but they turned around to return and watched the battle after sensing the raging aura emanating from that area. All of them turned to eye each other and looked rather surprised. It was especially so with those who were training in the regional palace. They knew how powerful Xing Kai was. Yi Futian's attack is still growing in force. One strike is getting more powerful than the previous one. Xing Kai is taking on both Yu Sheng and Yi Futian, who are getting stronger. If things keep going on like this, we'll be seeing a showdown before long, Pei Min commented. Yi Futian's combat prowess surprised him immensely. While he and Xing Kai both trained in the regional palace, and both men were of the same plane, the truth was that they never truly fought each other. Xing Kai joined the ranks of the regional palace later than he did. In truth, he was considered Xing Kai's senior. Both of them were only on the same plane, because Xing Kai managed to catch up later. Xing Kai had been amplifying all of his powers using heaven-punishing fighting will right from the start, while Yi Futian and Yu Sheng were growing increasingly strong in the fight instead. If things keep going like this, the odds will be stacked against Xing Kai soon enough. Xie Qingshan crossed his arms and said with a smile, "This is interesting indeed. Two proving holiness saints are proving to be a threat to Xing Kai." Before Yi Futian and Yu Sheng fought, everyone was listing the likes of Pei Min, Xie Qingshan, or Luo Yang when it came to figuring out who of the same generation as Xing Kai would be able to take him on. Yet, Yi Futian and Yu Sheng seemed to have emerged out of nowhere and attracted all the attention, surpassing Xing Kai within an instant. It will be unbelievably difficult to continue to climb in terms of power without limit though. The process will be needed to repeat several times before they can truly threaten Xing Kai. Pei Min replied telepathically. Xie Qingshan smiled and nodded. He naturally understood that as well. What they were doing was somewhat similar to Pei Min, who was a swordsman. However, Pei Min, who was a saint at the art of the sword, would have reached a ceiling nonetheless. It would have been merely impossible for his powers to continue climbing. He would have been invincible if he were to be capable of that. Yu Sheng's axe continued to be brought down again and again. After yet another rumble was heard, Xing Kai no longer moved forward. He was thrown behind by the force of the strike instead. It was apparent that he truly felt the pressure by then. An extremely dazzling beam of light tore through the sky like a star streaking through the heavens. That attack from the halberd came right after Yu Sheng's attack, with the follow-up done almost seamlessly. Xing Kai threw a huge palm print right away, before he was able to steady himself. A rumble was heard at that time. Halberd of time and space shattered the palm print right there, and then as it continued to move towards the god of war. Boom! An embodiment of will was conjured, and the halberd streaked through space. The light arrived, and a rumble was heard. Xing Kai's battle form was shattered to nothingness right away. Xing Kai was then thrown back. He was forced to retreat by Yi Futian and Yu Sheng. They are actually able to grow even stronger. Furthermore, that attack was imbued with extremely raging power of devastating while, at the same time, it contained extremely frightening shredding power. Just what kind of art of the halberd was that? Many who were able to read what happened shuddered deep down. They were surprised to find that Yi Futian's halberd of time and space attack was still growing in terms of power. Is his attack going to continue growing in power? Xing Kai's expression was ugly and awkward. However, there was no time for him to think. It seemed as if the heavens were about to be brought down on him. Yu Sheng's bat leaks continued to be brought down on him, giving him no respite at all. Yi Futian stepped forward, while Yu Sheng was attacking at the same time. Boom! An extremely devastating wave washed all over the place. He felt as if he melded with the great path of that space around him. A meteor streaked through the sky and landed on the god of war. His force was felt before he was even there. Boom! A dazzling beam of light came and went. Attacks from Yi Futian and Yu Sheng arrived one after another at that time. The halberd burst with light that was even brighter than the stars. Vast, unending stars seemed to have expanded. However, the halberd seemed to be able to snuff all those stars out. Boom, boom, boom. The rumble from the continuous clashes was extremely raging. It was as if a divine seal from the god of war clashed with Yu Sheng's bat leaks. However, the halberd that came right afterward banged on the rattling seal. Intense light burst, and the seal was shattered in the middle. Furthermore, the halberd of time and space did not stop. The beam of dazzling light continued moving forward. Xing Kai roared, and his spiritual will burst to the extreme, yet his body was sent flying. His spiritual will seemed to be on the verge of collapsing under that intense raging attack. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.